Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to show you plants that are good on the corners of foundations or someplace along your foundation that you can use some height. It's kind of the third part of a video series on foundation plants, where I'm just showing lots of different foundation plants. Most of the things I showed in the first two videos were things that would stay 6 foot or smaller, or even most of it 4 foot or smaller, and even a few ground covers mixed into that. Things that were just tough that you could plant on a foundation and kind of leave alone. But it is a good idea if you have a jut out somewhere on your foundation or on a corner to put some things that maybe get tall and narrow and allow for some height. So everything across your entire foundation doesn't end up 3 to 4 feet in height. It's just kind of good to have it mixed up. So let's get started. I'm down here at Flowerwood Nursery in Loxley, Alabama, and I've pulled quite a few things, and there's a couple things here in this mix I probably wouldn't use, but I'll show you a good alternative. I got quite a few plants to cover in this video. One thing you can do on the corner of a foundation is tree form something, you know, something that looks like almost like a crepe myrtle like you, and you could get a dwarf or a semi-dwarf crepe myrtle and use it on the corner. I wouldn't recommend a standard crepe myrtle, but some crepe myrtle that only gets about 15 feet in height. And then there's other shrubs that you can tree form. Ligustrum recurvifolium right here, which is, you know, typically used as a screening plant, can actually be limbed up from the bottom and create a small patio tree, and then can be kept, you know, 6 or 8 feet in height. And it's actually fairly easy to do that. This cherry laurel next to it has the beginnings of it down here. And so, you know, you can see the, you know, the heavy stems right here. This is what I would look for if you wanted to, you know, do a tree form like this. And over time, you can just limb up, you know, the leaves and the small stems off the bottom of it, and keep these 3 or 4 rigid stems. And then, you know, so cherry laurels, crepe myrtles, and ligustrum would make, you know, great choices for little tree forms. More of a mounding type habit would be this variegated pittosporum right here. The regular variegated pittosporum can get quite big, and so know that about it. If you have a place where high windows or you have a bare wall, that one would be a good choice. Gets fragrant little white flowers on it. I showed the mojo pittosporum right here in the previous video. That's a dwarf, only gets about 3 feet in height, and this one's going to get quite a bit taller than that. A couple of other kind of wider growing things would be Clayera, and typically with Clayera you would use these as screening plants. This is Juliet Clayera. I've used that one at the house, and it can get 6 feet in height or so, but these Clayera can be shaped however you want to shape them. And so, you know, they're really beautiful, colorful evergreen shrubs, and if you've got a corner space, you can keep these narrower, you know, with some pruning occasionally, and get 6 to 8 feet in height out of them, something like that. That's the same thing with this sweet viburnum right here, and I've covered this sugar cookie sweet viburnum before. I've got a little tour video I'm doing pretty soon that includes some sweet viburnum on the foundation. But they can get, you know, in that 6 feet in height range, but be kept pretty narrow, and you can see it's got a pretty upright growth habit. Another leafy evergreen shrub that has a upright habit is this golden euonymus. There's several different varieties. This is golden euonymus here. These are susceptible to some scale issues, euonymus scale, and if they're on a foundation sometimes and not getting air movement, they can really get eaten up by it. They're beautiful plants, sold in the trade everywhere. You know, every garden center and nursery you go into in the spring is going to have these, and they're super, super colorful. I tend to avoid them if they're going to be on a foundation, because they, like I say, without air movement, they do get a pretty bad insect problem. I included the gold dust tacuba on the previous video and said you can keep it 3 or 4 feet in height, but it can also be allowed to get about 6 feet in height and be upright and narrow, and so it makes a good choice on the corner of a foundation. The other leafy evergreen shrub here to talk about would be Camellias, specifically Camellias sasanquas. I did a tour video recently where a lady had these espaliered on a wall, meaning they were just grown flat against the wall, and these flower in the fall months, you know, September, October, November. This is October Magic Orchid, which I've shown before, and this is Yuletide. I had one of these on my foundation at the old house. I actually moved it in a video. The title of the video is something about moving a very large evergreen shrub, but these make great foundation plants on the corner where you need some height. Two kind of super narrow things to look at. This is a boxleaf euonymus. This is one that the Southern Living Plant Collection has released called Irish Mint. These can be kept whatever size you want, but you see how just a perfect little upright, narrow evergreen, really, really nice foliage on it. And the new growth on this one is really bright green. Of course, these are sky pencil hollies right here. Sky pencil hollies are sold pretty much everywhere, hardy up into zone 6. I've got videos, basically every plant you're seeing in this video, I've got a video for them, and you can get more detail on them. Another one, another Japanese holly that's upright and narrow is called Steeds. I've also covered it on the channel as well. These do not let sky pencil hollies get dry. They will defoliate on you pretty quickly. They're actually not the most drought tolerant plants, and neither is Steeds. That covers the first 2 rows with these leafy evergreens. Let's talk about hollies, because lots and lots of people have hollies on their foundations, and you know, from little dwarf hollies, you know, up to these types of hollies, which are upright and narrow. I'll show you my favorite ones here, and the first couple though, I'm going to say to avoid putting on a foundation. This is Nellie Stevens holly, and Nellie just tends to get too wide at the base to be a good corner plant. I've got a couple, 3 more varieties coming up that I think are better choices, and it's extremely prickly if you've ever dealt with Nellie Stevens holly. Great screening plant, no argument there, and I've included it in, you know, lots of videos in the past, and it's a heavy fruiting holly, really beautiful plant, but I don't think it's great for the corner of a foundation just because of the width it gets toward the bottom. That's the same thing with dwarf Burford holly. Dwarf Burford I see used frequently on foundations, especially builders putting them in, but it gets as wide as it does tall. I had one at the nursery in the ground that I used for cuttings. It must have been 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide, and I don't think that's a very good choice for a foundation, or for, you know, any place on a foundation really. The better alternative to dwarf Burford is needlepoint holly, and you can see that needlepoint holly is just more upright in that container. Of course, they're different ages, but you see how broad this one is versus how upright and narrow that is. But needlepoint holly would be a good choice. This one's going to be easily kept 6 to 8 feet, something like that, but be upright and narrow and not in your face. Also fruits pretty well. The 3 hollies I would use in place of Nellie Stevens would be this golden Oakland, which I've covered pretty thoroughly on the channel. I've got one planted at the house. This is the regular Oakland holly right here. You can see how narrow this one grows. And then robin holly. And another nice feature on all 3 of these is they look wicked, but you can actually get in here and touch these and they don't really hurt at all. All right, so that was all leafy evergreen things. Now I'm going to move to conifers that are good for the corners of foundations. This is emerald arborvitae here. This is well known and used quite a bit. This one's super skinny in this container because they've definitely sheared it several times. I actually think emerald can kind of get a little too wide in the landscape in a lot of settings. I think DeGroote's arborvitae is probably a better choice if you can find it for staying upright and narrow. But if you can use the width at the base, and this, you know, it can get probably more than 6 feet at the base as it gets quite large. Another thing that you got to be careful not letting it get too dry. For some reason, some of these upright, narrow plants, they seem to have a hard time sometimes getting enough water up into the top of the plant. So don't let it become dry. I'm not telling you to water it and water it and water it, but do keep an eye on the irrigation on these. This is a juniper right here with a similar growth habit called Hetsai. Junipers are tougher plants than arborvitaes. If you struggle with growing conifers in your area, junipers, especially as you move into the south, junipers are just tougher plants. And so that's a good choice for you. I've got right there, that's Blue Point juniper. That's one of my favorite upright narrow junipers. Of course, it's in a 1 gallon container there, so I realize it's not super impressive, but you can see, you know, how nice and full that one grows, and it's got that blue-green hue to it. We can't grow a lot of blue conifers in the south, but that one grows nicely. This is Italian cypress, which I've covered on the channel. Doesn't particularly like the humidity of the southeast, but you do see them occasionally. Tends to be more of a plant you'd see out in the southwest, but people do like to try to grow them on the east coast, and certainly there's nothing more upright and narrow than a Italian cypress. Then this is mood ring podocarpus. This one's kind of, it's a newly planted plant, so it's not upright and narrow. I've got one of these at the house that I'll put over this video so that you can see how nice this mood ring podocarpus is. I covered Pringle's podocarpus in the other one that stays kind of small. Mood ring can get about 15 feet tall. Great plant for a foundation. This is Roman candle podocarpus. This thing's going to sell like mad. These are going to be all over the place in the South for sure in the next few years. Look how beautiful that plant is. All the new growth on Roman candle. I think that probably fairly limited availability on this one so far, but in the next few years, like I say, you're going to see that plant all over the place. Great upright, narrow habit with very little maintenance to do on it. I included the dwarf gold hinoki cypress in the other foundation video because you can keep these pretty small, but if given time, this thing can creep up, you know, to 6 feet in height and look like a little 6 foot tall yellow Christmas tree. So it's a good choice on a corner. You'd have to be patient with it or buy a larger one when you purchase them, just because otherwise the time between this size and 6 feet is going to take a long time. Of course, gold mop cypress I did not include in either one of these videos. I just couldn't find any here at the nursery. I've covered gold mop many times. Gold mop, same thing. You see lots of people keeping them 3 feet tall, but they can creep up 6 or 8 feet. I've even seen them tree formed before as much as 12 and 15 feet in height. So keep that in mind if you use gold mop cypress. It can get quite big, but it can also be kept pretty small. But that's the conifers, you know, a good selection of conifers. I think if you have really hot, a really hot full sun foundation and you want something upright and narrow in the South, I do think that junipers are your best bet. Blue Point, and that's, like I said, that's Hetzi right there. I think Emerald Arborvitae, those Eastern Arborvitas, you know, as you move into the north, they're probably, you know, they're great choices. But in the Southeast, I do tend to think these struggle a bit. Everyone will always try to grow Italian cypress, but, you know, not necessarily a great choice in our humidity. And I do like podocarpus quite a bit for screening. So again, that's quite a few things that I think will work well on the corner of a foundation. It's a lot, but certainly not anywhere near all the options there are. So thank you very much again for watching these videos. And like I said, the plants that are in here, I have individual plant videos for almost all of them.